latest and greatest. Hope all is well. Hope everybody's feeling fantastic as we start off another week, the final week, or final few days really, because it's not a full week, considering that August is on Friday. Can you believe it? Summer is almost halfway over, technically, depending on where you live. Of course, me in the Northeast, summer is fleeting. It goes by way too fast. And even though we still have plenty of time, no need to start thinking about, oh, it's August, or oh, a month from now is going to be Labor Day. And what's worse, that Labor Day is actually on the 1st. So generally Labor Day, as we've come to know it, it's, you figure the 3rd, 4th, 5th, somewhere around there where it's usually in the latter part, but fresh out the box, September 1st, Labor Day. So that means an even earlier into summer. But no, let's not dwell on that. Let's not talk about that. Let's not even think about what lies ahead, because just as I like to say, time has no friends. Time doesn't care about what you did yesterday, and time for damn sure doesn't care about what you did tomorrow, because it hasn't come. You got to deal with right now, in this moment. And right now is the podcast pregame, as I'm already set up, ready to go. I don't have the ring light here as opposed to behind me. So I appreciate everybody who's watching this on replay, or for people who are going to start jumping live. Again, it goes beyond any explanation, beyond anything that's in my heart and soul, that I appreciate each and every one of you, especially the last podcast pregame on Thursday, which I had a few followers and few newbies trickling in. So that is always a good thing. It's always a plus. But yes, as you can see, I'm rocking a new do, which I'll talk about a little bit on the podcast, but I had to do it. I was sick and tired of the hair just growing, and you would think that I have a hair or looking like Samson, which was far from it. But for those who were unaware, I usually rock my hair short, maybe not as short as this, but I figured, you know what? I'm tired of it. I used to go to a barber, my guy Lewis, shout out to him. But since I've started doing this full time, and from a standpoint of not spending money on a haircut, thankfully my lovely wife was the one who was cutting my hair for, what is it now, dating back to last summer. And then now I figured I'd give her a break. Let me just shave it all off. Easy to maintain, easy to do. Don't have to worry about having to cut, trim, make sure everything is perfectly situated on top of my head. So now I could just rock this for the rest of the summer and maybe even into the fall, who knows. But yes, Northeast, not to play weatherman, but it's going to be hot, just like I like it. I believe 94 today, 95 tomorrow. It's going to feel like 100 in New York. I believe also 94 on Wednesday. So yes, I will be all over the warm weather, and I may even get out to run, which I know can be dangerous early afternoon, but I'm built for it. And I probably shouldn't say that as a knock on wood, as a proclamation to think that, I'm bigger than the heat, I could withstand it, blah, blah, blah. But obviously, I run in the shade on the cool sidewalks. I'm not trying to get out there baking and overheating, etc. So, but anyway, I digress. I'm talking about all these different things. For starters, podcast coming at you today. Few topics of discussion. Of course, baseball is going to be front and center, as you know. Trade deadline is on Thursday. Had a few trades trickle in over the last few days, and I'm sure it's going to pick up here as we get closer to Thursday, 6 p.m. And we'll see where these teams that are looking to jockey for position, whether it's trying to get into the playoffs, whether it's trying to make a deep run in October to fortify their rosters, because as we all know, after January 31st, you can't make any other transactions, where years past used to have those waiver deals where from August 1st to the 31st, a team that's going to waive their player, any other team can pick them up. That's a thing of the past. So we have that, but a wild weekend with the Astros getting swept at home by the A's, and of course the record-setting performance by Nick Kurtz on Friday night. And with the way that the AL is now shaping up, considering that the Tigers, who have been in a free fall, although they stopped some bleeding yesterday, avoiding a sweep by the Blue Jays in their building. And we understand baseball, we all know, marathon, ebbs and flows, peaks, valleys, etc. But right now, boy, they've really hit a valley. And hopefully they'll get the snap out of it, because the Tigers, who looked like they were going to be a shoo-in, which I still believe in the AL Central, but I thought maybe as a 1 seed where they'll have home field going through Comerica. But as of right now, it's Toronto, north of the border, the Rogers Center, that's looking to be the case. And then when you have Toronto, I believe, has a 2-game lead on the Tigers, and also somewhere in the same vicinity over the Astros. Those 3 teams are going to fight it out to see who is going to be, at least in the bye scenario, 1 and 2 in the American League. Now, of course, can you sleep on the Yankees? I guess to a certain extent you can't, because you figure that they're going to get healthy at some point. Granted that Aaron Judge is out of the lineup for the next 10 days. He has that issue with his elbow. Thankfully for them, it wasn't a torn UCL, because if that was the case, who knows? Their playoff chances probably would have gone down the toilet. But I think they'll still be fine to make a wild card at least. I don't think they're going to completely drop out, even with Judge out of the lineup over the next, 8 days or so. But between that series where they had to salvage against the Phillies, as the Phillies beat them up in the first 2 days, you also have the other scenario in baseball where the Dodgers or the Giants got swept by the Mets, which certainly hurt their chances in the NL West if they were trying to catch the Dodgers. What else you have? Besides the baseball and the trade deadlines, some basketball news. I'll throw some WNBA at you, and a housekeeping note real quick. Friday, I put up another commentary video. I like to put up these commentaries, which I'm going to do more often. And of course, this is a slow sports period, so it's not as if there's a lot of things percolating throughout sports. I'm sure you've probably seen other channels which may be just tailored to basketball or maybe even football for that matter, where they'll just put clickbait titles and talking about LeBron and how this trade is the worst trade in NBA history when it's not. No, you're not going to get that from yours truly. But as we get deeper into the summer, and then obviously college football and the football season, pro football will be really part of our consciousness. Obviously, there'll be a lot to unpack then as we get from that point into September. I also have some, and speaking of that commentary video, it's on the WNBA, which I'll talk about on the podcast, in fact. It's me following the league a little bit better than I said I was dating back to last September. So it's an interesting commentary. It's 9 minutes. Also make a couple of comparisons as to why I haven't really fully grasped the WNBA. And it's nothing against the league, the players, etc. by any means. And it's not the case. So I delve into that with a deeper explanation. So definitely check that out on the YouTube channel. And, of course, podcast coming today, as you know. I'll talk a little bit about the WNBA, especially with the Liberty, the reigning champs, suffering a big injury. And not only that, but they're also going to have a rematch with the finalists of last year, the Minnesota Lynx. And they actually play them 3 more times, home and home in the middle of August. And they play them this coming Wednesday in Minnesota. So sure to be a hotly contested matchup between those 2 teams. I'll get into Hulk Hogan. Of course, I know it's a few days old, but since the podcast, my last podcast Thursday, the news of Hogan came down that afternoon, so I didn't really have a chance to fully unpack that. And more or less, I'm going to unpack, now I'm not going to go through his whole history, but just me as a teenager with WrestleMania, as it was really starting to take off, the WWF at the time, and what he meant to wrestling, etc. So I'll get into that. And I understand he had his outside the ring issues, and I know a lot of people, of course, are going to be divided by that, where it's like, oh, we'll celebrate his career. Me, when I gave him my little RIP, was just to kind of talk about him being a pillar and a legend in what he did for wrestling, WWEF. I understand he went to WCW and was part of the New World Order and became a heel, etc. So I'll touch on a little bit on that. I take that back. I'll even go in on the polarizing side of it, and not to really go in the weeds about it, but when we have a situation where a legendary figure or celebrity for that matter succumbed, and they have the pluses and the minuses, you got to talk about both of them. Now, I understand maybe the pluses outshine the minuses in some degree, but the minus here obviously is certainly a terrible optic on his part. But be that as it may, I'll touch on that, and also anything else that's going on in the world of sports. So I have that cooking, and a couple other things I want to address. Wednesday, live stream, 12 noon Eastern time. That's going to be a good one because I'm going to have my first giveaway. I actually had a giveaway for my anniversary podcast, for those who remember, dating back to March. Well, I'm bringing it back. Giveaway. You definitely want to stay tuned for that. 12 noon Eastern time. And I also want to bring up another issue. I was going to say an issue, that's too strong. Another wrinkle I want to add to the live stream on Wednesday, which last week was probably my best one yet. It's on the YouTube channel if you want to go back and listen to it or watch it. I'd appreciate it if you do so. And for that person who just hopped on board, thank you for tuning in. But as, oh my guy, baseball purist. Yes, Thursday. I talked a little bit about it before, just a couple of things. I didn't really go into the trades, but that I'll talk about in the podcast, of course. But with the live stream on Wednesday, giveaway, and also I want to incorporate a little wrinkle starting in August and also throw an idea at you guys and gals to see what you think. Because, yeah, I'm really looking to take this next level, especially with the live streams and even with these podcast pre-games or even other ideas that I have for the live stream that I want to certainly get your feedback on. So I'm going to talk about that on Wednesday's podcast. Because really with sports, yes, there will be a trade deadline preview, which we'll get into, and whatever trades that happen between now and then. But other than that, what is there to discuss? Not much. NFL, I understand training camp, some injuries that have taken place. No key injuries, but all right, some things that have come down the pike. NBA and NHL, not much happening there. Boxing, I know it was a death. What was it? I guess yesterday it was Dwight Muhammad Kawi, who was a heavyweight fighter. He progressed to being a heavyweight, was a two-time champ in prison, etc. Died at 72, I believe, last night. So thoughts, prayers, and condolences go out to the Kawi family. And yes, I will talk about that, baseball purist. Although, you know, it's interesting. Here, I'll give you a little preview of the podcast today. I think the story of the weekend, despite the fact that the Mets have won 7 in a row, I know the Giants, they've been flailing here. To my guy Val, who's a Giant fan out in the West Coast, I know, rough weekend for him. Or actually, rough week, considering, because they got swept in Toronto. They did win 2 out of 3 in Atlanta, and then they got swept by the Mets. So certainly not good for the Giants here. But as much as the Mets could be the story, I think the story of the weekend was the Astros. Them getting swept at home by the Athletics. And then in the process, you had Nick Kurtz had that just epic performance, one of the great performances that you'll ever see in a single game offensively. 6 for 6, 4 homers, 8 RBIs, 6 runs scored. I mean, geez, 19 total bases. I mean, how do you even follow up with that? What do you do for an encore? And to think he only did it in his, 66th game. So kudos, hats off to Kurtz, but the Astros had an abysmal weekend. And even though I know they'll be fine in the AL West, I don't think Seattle's catching them, even with them bringing in Josh Naylor. And who knows what they're going to do here over these next few days. Maybe they bring Eugenio Suarez back from Arizona, as Arizona's now dumping everybody between trading the likes of Randall Grichuk, who went to Kansas City. And I'm sure who knows what's going to happen with Zach Gallen or Suarez for that matter. But the Diamondbacks look like they could be in sales mode here over the next few days. So we'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, this is the Sports Dead Zone 2.0. The first one is after the Super Bowl up until March Madness, but even more so right to the baseball season. And then now, once you get past the opening week of the NBA and NHL free agency, pretty much from after the 4th of July up until the end of August, it is going to be quiet, barring any major injuries in the NFL with training camp, with preseason, etc. I know college football, not on a lot of people's consciousness, or people look to college football on Labor Day weekend where they have the big schedule, of course. And obviously we still have a month to go for that. But yeah, there really isn't much to talk about. Nothing much to unpack, nothing much to get into, nothing much, I mean, what can I tell you? So, but you know, hey, I'll put up a good show, lots to get into. Obviously the Astros are the big part of the weekend. I'll talk about the Mets, of course. Now to go to San Diego. Let's see how they fare down in Southern California. Hopefully the good vibes from NorCal go to SoCal in the process before they come home this weekend. And then, what was the other big news item of the weekend? I know Judge, him with the elbow and them having to avoid a sweep. There was another issue. I talked about it last night on my shorts. No, it wasn't Dodgers. Oh, Tigers. Tigers almost got swept by the Blue Jays. Now, I know the Blue Jays are riding high. They are looking like a team that they have a 5-game lead or 6-game lead, I believe. Yeah, 5 in a loss, but 6 games ahead of the Yankees. And they're playing like world beaters right now. But the Tigers, man, they have hit a tailspin. They're going to be fine in the division, but as I mentioned at the top, baseball purist, the Tigers now are in that mix between them, the Astros, and even with the Blue Jays ahead of them as to who's going to get home field or who's going to get a bye. Now, granted, we still have 2 more months to play of baseball, and in fact, exactly 2 months from today is the end of the baseball season. I can't even wrap my head around that. I understand the baseball season isn't forever, although it seems that way. And also, it's weird how all these dates align because, well, the baseball season started on the 27th of March. So when I'm thinking 28th, I thought the baseball season started March 28th. I would have been like, wait a minute. Baseball season started exactly 4 months ago today, and then it's going to end 2 months from now. But it actually started the 27th, and here it is now, 4 months already into a baseball season with 2 more months to go. And let's see how it shakes down. And obviously the trade deadline is going to be huge to see which players go where, who's going to be selling, who's going to be buying, as we all know. So we got that to deal with. And like I said, podcast today, as you know, which I'll probably release it somewhere between 12 and 1. So check that out, Apple, Spotify, right here on YouTube. The website is JAYREELZ.com. But also, the next live stream, Wednesday, 12 noon, again, I'll have a giveaway. It'll be a trivia question. I'll probably have it pertaining to the podcast like I did during my anniversary podcast. I don't want to do just like a sports trivia. I mean, if you don't get the question, let's say in the first half hour, then maybe in the second half hour, I'll do a sports trivia because I know I stumped everybody with the trivia question I had during the anniversary. So I got that cooking. And then also I want to add a possible wrinkle to the live stream and then also get your feedback on something that I have brewing for August. And it's the entire month when it comes to live streaming. And that's your hint. So we'll talk about that. JAYREELZ, watch Real Minto. Was that in the game yesterday? I didn't watch the highlights yesterday. I know the Yankees won 4-3. And I would have thought Zach Wheeler pitched and the Yankees won. Real Minto jumping in, sliding. I wonder if that was the game yesterday because I saw the highlights Saturday. And Friday night they won 9-3 going away. And yesterday was a close game. So yeah, I'll check that out. And I did watch yesterday. I'll check that out. And baseball purists, I did watch the beginning of the Action Bronson, Francisco Lindor. I saw it on YouTube. It was only 16 minutes. Was that how long the podcast was? I just want to be curious just so I know I'm watching the right thing because I don't know if they did a longer one or if that was the one you were referring to there the other day. So, yeah, because it popped up on my YouTube feed. And they were in, it's called Café con Lindor, and I know that they were in, looked like a coffee shop somewhere in Queens or maybe a deli or something. So, yeah, let me know if that's the right one. I saw it was like 16 and a half minutes or somewhere in that 16-minute range, if that's it. All right, bet. Yeah, I started watching it. I was watching it with the wife, but then, the wife got bored. So I said, all right, I'll watch it on my own time. So, yeah, I'll definitely check that out, and we'll talk about that on the live stream come Wednesday. But I don't know, baseball players, anything else? I'll talk about the Mets. Anything else you want me to touch on for the podcast? We'll talk about that. You'll listen to that later on, hopefully. And then obviously Wednesday, looking forward to that. Hopefully we get all the regulars, the particulars, and some more people hop on board, which would be great. Not only with the giveaway that I'll have, but also the other things that I want to share with you guys and gals, which will be a lot of fun because I want to incorporate you. This is the whole point of these live streams, to get you guys involved. It's not matter just me talking about what it is with sports or even with my hair for that matter, shaving it off the other day, not only because it's hot here in the Northeast, but I figured I just needed a change. I was tired of the length. I didn't want my wife to cut it. And she cuts good hair, by the way, but I figured, let me just get the clippers, shave it off, and that's it. Call it a day. So for those that hop on board, I appreciate it. For those who follow, subscribe, etc., I appreciate it even more. This is the little engine that could as I'm trying to get to 1,000 subs, as you all know, and beyond. That's not where I want to plateau. I want to get beyond that because doing what I do, talking sports, what I love, etc., sharing it with you guys, and even talking about whatever is on your mind, because that's the whole point of having these live streams, to be that conduit from what's happening on the diamond, the ice, gridiron, hardwood, etc., to be that voice and to be that credible voice, not just one that's going to be here just for clickbait and nonsense and all that. So you know what? Let me get cooking, people. I'll see you on the live stream Wednesday. Podcast coming later. As always, thank you so much for stopping by. Baseball purists and a couple others that hopped on board. Again, your support is truly and gratefully appreciated. So stay cool wherever you're at. I know it's going to be hot throughout the nation. And even if you're overseas, to my peeps in Serbia, to Mirjana, get well soon. I hear you're not feeling too well. And obviously you've been a big contributor to the channel, live streams, etc. And to your son, Vladislav, thank you also as well. And I'll see you guys on a live stream Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Podcast one more time coming at you later. Apple, Spotify, JAYREELZ.com. Of course, right here on the YouTube channel at JAYREELZ. So until then, from the South Bronx, South Beach, South Central, South Pacific, and all points beyond, peace, love, and God bless. Wednesday, high noon, people, sharp on the flip, baby.